Welcome, everyone, to the newest edition of What's Up Humanities Alum. I am David Elder. I am an associate professor of writing and rhetoric here at Morningside, and today I am lucky enough to be able to talk to Trey Rossman. Trey, can you tell everyone when you graduated and what your major was?
I was a 2017 graduate, double majored in history and education.
History and education, excellent. And how are you using that degree right now?
I am teaching. This will be coming up on end of 7 years of teaching.
7 years of teaching. Wow. So you were one of the lucky that got to teach in a pandemic during your first few years. How was that for you?
Honestly, I think it there's no perfect solution to it, and that's kind of where everyone was. But I think you can see a lot of positives to teaching in a pandemic like that in case it ever happens again, just because schools will be better prepared. But a
Sure.
lot of the time it was just, you're kind of hoping and praying and just kind of winging it because there's really nothing that the country or school system's ever seen to that degree where everything's shut down for so long. So that was kind of the challenge. But my biggest goal during the pandemic was just to make sure that I was still giving my students the resources and materials that were needed to make them actually try to learn something. Now, it's obviously harder when you're all online because you can't proctor them and you can't monitor them, but it was also taught them a lot about accountability and being self-dependent and self-advocating, that like I have to do this. So that was just kind of my whole mindset towards it.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously you are teaching in the field that you studied in. But other than just the subject material, how would you say that studying the humanities helped you to become a teacher?
I think a whole bunch of it, because humanities, there's so much under that umbrella of the term humanities, right? And whether you're left, right, or center, I think we can all do a good job of appreciating what other cultures have to give to the world and how those different cultures interact with each other, and just understanding just a whole bunch of things like societal norms, psychological norms. But it's very important because you see it in the news all the time, right? Like intolerance from the left and the right, and like there's no common ground, it seems, anymore. And especially teaching social studies, that's one thing that I strive to do, is to teach it from both sides and like help my kids understand that when you get out into the real world, this is how the real world's gonna be. Like you have to make decisions for yourself. You have to make decisions to what's right and what's wrong, what's morally right, what's morally wrong. So, and it's just exposing kids, I think, is the biggest thing, and not being afraid to have hard conversations with them.
Can you think of any classes that specifically helped prepare you to have those hard conversations? And what was it about that class that helped you?
You're making me go through the archives here, Elder. I definitely think that any class with Professor Bass exposes you to those things, just because I have all the respect in the world for Dr. Bass in terms of he taught it fairly, he taught it from both sides, and he taught it in a way that was comprehensible to understand that this is what happened with scenario A. This is the effect of scenario A. And he just made it very interesting of making connections with how it applies to today. Professor Gelcher, he also does a great job of exposing you to just different cultures. I mean, he specializes in Asian civilization, in East Asian civilization. So us in the West, we're not obviously in tune with the cultural and historical background of those. And then Kitty Green, she also gave a good perspective just from just a different gender's perspective, right? Of just like this is how women have been viewed throughout history and the progress that we've made in that area.
Sure. And do you find that students are willing to have those difficult conversations as long as it's sort of modeled for them?
Oh, 100%. And that's the one thing that I appreciate about teaching is that as long as you set guidelines and boundaries, kids are going to have an opinion on something. But one of the things that I do is we do like they have to do actual research on a debate and they have to get perspectives from left, right, and center news sources and just compare and contrast. Because that's one of the big things that I'm sure that we can all agree is that when you are having hard conversations about societal issues, global issues, so on and so forth, that you want to have the facts and what left, right, and center can all agree on as
Great.
being actually factual.
Sure. And what other aspects to your job are there other than teaching? What are some other things that you're involved with at your school?
Huh. Coaching. I coach all 3 seasons, so fall, winter, and spring. And then that's really it in terms of my extra duties. But I mean, it's a small school, so we all have to step up and volunteer for that stuff. Or voluntold, I think, is probably the better way of saying it. But
Great. Do you see your humanities training helping you at all in the coaching realm?
yeah, I do because, and I think that's more from the psychological perspective. Is just you when you're coaching, it's a different realm of connections than when you're in the classroom. And anyone that's ever been involved in extracurriculars, it doesn't even have to be involved with sports, has experienced that. And it's just you have to figure out how to make connections and establish relationships with your respective athletes or speedsters or one act members, right? And it's just psychologically is probably the biggest thing.
Awesome. Well, one thing we like to ask everybody is what's a favorite story you have about being at Morningside? You know, one that you're willing to tell on something that's going to be up on YouTube.
I would have to probably say Professor Bass's, I believe it was Modern European Civilization. It was a group project course, and my group that I got put with, we I can't remember exactly who it was, but they didn't understand the rigor and the workload of a Bass class because they were just taking it to mostly knock 2 flags out with one class, which is fine. But just looking back on that and understanding how much work we had to do, but like how much knowledge we gained from it too as a group was probably the biggest thing. And then also kind of coaxing them along and just saying like Professor Bass has high expectations. So if we don't get a good grade on this, like I don't want you to be devastated. But I mean, that was definitely Professor Bass's MO, and it's helped me even as an educator in like holding high expectations for students and understanding that this is what's expected. If you don't do this or you act like a moron, like this is going to be the consequence of not doing what you're supposed to do, which is
Great.
a lot.
Yeah. What about advice you would give to someone who's thinking of studying the humanities?
Go into it with an open mind for sure, because you'll have your opinions on anything and everything, which is fine. But definitely go into it with an open mind and understand that, especially the professors at Morningside are going to do their best to not teach it from a biased perspective. I never experienced that in my classrooms, at least, but definitely take a chance on it because you're exposed to so many different areas of study.
Great. And then, you know, for our last question, we always like to ask, what's next? So, what's next for Trey Rossman?
What's next? Continuing to teach and educate the youth of America. I'm going to do this as long as I can, but I mean, that's about it.
Excellent. Well, Trey, thank you so much for your time. This has been very enlightening. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Appreciate you having me on.